Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about business skills. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what do you think is the best way to learn business or corporate skills for someone who has a programming background? So first things first, you need to figure out what level of technical background or like programming skill you actually already have, because it comes down to experience basically. The big ugly truth of business is that the vast majority of middle managers and people who are in product development and so forth are basically just they're incompetent to the point where they won't be able to help an IT company make anything happen. That is usually down to a combination of more complicated things that they have some magical sauce knowledge that they got from school. Most people who are product owners, product managers, etc., have one and only one thing, which is a basic work framework. That's what they're armed with. Like they know a pattern of working so that they sort of know how sort of you structure a process around. I mean, many of them don't even have the skills to actually implement it, but what they simply learn about things like Agile, Scrum, etc. Then they have different types of methodologies to do certain things. For example, creating a technical, or not a technical roadmap, but a roadmap, and working with different types of deliverables and so forth. These are, if to make an analogy, basically the same thing as we software developers learn when we talk about theory, the theory of how to program. That is what most product owners and product managers have with them when they go into IT, but they lack almost everything related to actual skills with any types of tools or any types of, like, they don't have any knowledge how software is being built. They don't know anything about anything basically, and so they heavily depend on one thing only: communication skills, soft skills. That is the number one thing a person who has quote-unquote business and corporate skills, or anyone who works in that area, has to have in order to survive, because you cannot do it without it. Because the higher managers and like the people who are above you, or like the people that you interact with, they depend on one part, your administrative skills, that you actually know how to do to work as you do within an IT company, so you at least understand that part. That's half of it, because otherwise we can't give you any type of responsibilities in anything. The other part is that you actually know how to talk to people, set up meetings, facilitate meetings, etc. That is, I would say it's almost 99% of what the standard roles within the business and corporate layers of an organization have. Now, as a software developer, you have one thing that they do not have, and that is technical actual knowledge of things. If you've ever wondered why there are so many meetings in IT, it is because of this thing. It is because most of the time, the people who are calling the software developers into meetings and so forth, you're being pulled in there because they don't know how to do things. And if you were the one who was doing what they are supposed to be doing, I'm not saying that you want to, I'm not saying that it's easy, but I'm saying that if you had the responsibilities that they have, you wouldn't usually need the meeting, because you know what the state of the system is and how to build things and so forth. And that's what they don't know. That's why they depend on you so much. So in a sense, they're the aggregate, like they're the go-between between all the different departments. They're the hub, if that makes sense. And for you to learn that, it's actually very simple. You simply have to take over some of those responsibilities to a certain degree. And so to learn that is actually the transition is usually this. Usually, for a software developer to become more business-minded or become a manager or something like that, you start out by learning how to code. That's number one. Number two is that you get to be so experienced with software development that you can start making assessments of things such as architecture or so forth. The normal path is usually like junior software developer, mid-level software developer, tech lead or like senior or like whatever you want to call it, someone who is now sort of responsible for a small team somewhere or something like that, because that is your first step towards management if you just go the technical route, right? And now you have to prove yourself. Basically you have to show that you can talk to stakeholders, that you have domain knowledge and all this sort of stuff, and the better you are at this, I promise you guys, you in some cases you won't even have a way of stopping it, because once you get to that level you are now adjacent to the sphere of the stuff that all the POs and like whoever, like business analysts and so forth, like what they are doing. And remember, their number one weakness is that they do not have technical knowledge, which is this thing that you are offering. You're like basically the oxygen or the water or whatever. You're the foundation of everything else. Without you, nothing else matters, and the knowledge you have. So if you in that get to that level and you show that you have the soft skills, because that is literally the thing that you have to have. This is the only thing that they have, like that's your borderland, if that makes sense. It's the thing that you have that is overlapping between the two skill sets. If you have that, everything else that they know is usually the same sort of things that you could learn on your own. There's not that much that you don't have to go that far to learn all of the different tools that they are using, because you remember guys, the role is not like, it's not like a product owner or product manager has hardcore engineering skills. They have management skills and soft skills and so forth. And so if you have organic soft skills, that's almost half of what they are doing. The other half you might take some time for you to learn, but it's not that you can't adopt it. But once you get to this level, now you'll start to notice something. If people realize that actually it's very useful to have this specific person like you in this case in meetings, because you have domain knowledge, you know what can be done, what cannot be done, what a good solution looks like, what a bad solution looks like, and you can answer that in like a socially graceful way. It's a pleasant experience to have you a part of different meetings and so forth. You're gone as a full-time software developer. I can basically promise you that. It never fails. So soft-skilled, gifted software developers never stay as pure software developers for long, unless they really try. They have to want it, because as soon as you get to that level, you get pulled in immediately. Because as I said, there is this ocean of people who know all the other stuff about everything else. They know everything except the code, except the thing that actually brings money. That's everything else they know. So you are actually a very great complement to have on hand to that sort of organization. And by just being pulled into that environment, you will pick up a lot of the things that the other, like the POs and the PMs and like what all their stuff that they're doing, you're going to be involved. It's almost like you're almost you become an organic apprentice, if that makes sense. You follow them. They usually involve you in practically everything. So you sort of start to learn that, oh yeah, they're using this methodology. Like these guys and girls, they want to do Safe or Scrum, or like here's Lean. Like you get exposure like that. And as I said, most of what is required for you to actually get that business understanding is to just understand all these people, because they are this is the business part of an IT company. And since you have the technical background, you've already gone through like the process of becoming a software developer, you really now you know pretty much the two big blocks. Usually the only block that's usually lost in translation is like design and so forth. That is because there's usually 3 blocks in a standard IT company: business, design, and engineering, depending on how you want to slice it. So you're going to sort of get very, very strong and organic exposure to at least 2/3 of what makes up the entire IT company. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you want to learn business and corporate skills as a software developer, it's actually very simple. Start out being a pretty kick-ass software developer. Learn the domain of how your company codes and like the systems work, and make sure that you understand how to answer questions related to the domain and different approaches and possibilities that you can use in order to solve different sorts of business problems, which is you know how to write software in an efficient manner, right? Once you have that level of skill, you will very organically get into a tech lead type of position or a team lead position, which is your first step towards management usually. When you get there, just make sure that you're always a pleasant person to talk to. Make sure that you're helpful and you answer questions and messages and so forth, and be available to POs and PMs, as I said, because most of what they do depend on the fact that they have a dialogue with the engineers somehow. And if you're one of those engineers who is very knowledgeable, very nice to talk to and so forth, then you have 50% of, like, you show that you have the 50% of what they are doing, which is the talking to people and making people understand what's going on and aligning and all of this sort of stuff. That's going to mean that they're going to start to ask you to be part of their meetings usually, or like do rubber ducking or like feedback sessions and so forth, and take a bigger part. Just be open to that and be part in meetings, sit in and make meaningful contributions in conversations and so forth. And I promise you, by just doing that, you are now already 50%. Like, you're not a product owner, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you have 50% of the skill set that is now required in order for you to do all the things within the business part of a company. The other 50% is like, you know, depending on what type of, if it's a PO or a PM or a business analyst or whatever, there's a lot of other skills that they have, but that part is the thing that overlaps. So you represent the engineering part together with them, who represents the business part, and then you usually have a design or some other department. You can have legal and so forth, of course, and together, like, this is this area that you overlap with each other. And by just being part of those conversations, you will basically get free mentorship, and if you want to take it further, you can take some courses and so forth if you want to. But I found that just being exposed to that environment gets you pretty far in terms of developing corporate and like business skills and stuff like that. Have a great day.